Pleasure to welcome now Congressman Michael Guest. He represents Mississippi's 3rd District. Congressman Guest, good to have you on this morning, sir.
Gerard, great to talk to you again. I hope you had a great weekend.
Yes, sir, other than some disappointing football for the Bulldogs and the Rebels.
That it was. Thank goodness Southern Miss was able to pull out a victory.
Absolutely.
Not the football weekend that we were all hoping for.
Yeah, exactly right. But the weather's turned off pretty nice. So, all right, you guys are not in Washington. You're not in session right now, right?
That's right. The House is not in session. The Senate is in session. They will be voting again later today to try to break the filibuster to pass the CR that the House sent to the Senate some 4 weeks ago. Not expected that the vote is going to change today. Had hoped that maybe once we got past the No Kings rally that there may be some more moderate Democrats who would consider caucusing with Republicans to reopen the government. But from the information I'm hearing, I don't think that that's going to happen today. But we do have a big deadline coming up on Friday. Friday is when there are hundreds of thousands of federal employees who will not be paid, including federal law enforcement. And so that creates an inflection point, I think, for the Senate. And I'm also have been told that the Senate will take up a bill on Wednesday that would authorize the payment of all essential federal employees during the shutdown. So that is something Republicans intend to bring to the floor, again, to kind of minimize some of the impact of the shutdown that has now gone on now into the 4th week.
And, Congressman, we have concerns about our United States Armed Forces, members that are serving active duty members in particular in our military. We found a pot of money to get them paid in the last period, but I don't think we have that in the next one, right?
Yeah, the Trump administration was able to find research and development dollars, which they were able to shift to pay our military. I don't believe that there is enough money left, particularly in the R&D budget, to pay salaries for the next 2 weeks. Now, the administration may be able to find some additional dollars. But, look, I got to give the president a lot of credit here, Gerard. I mean, the president has worked very hard to minimize the damage, the impact of the shutdown.
Yeah.
He's paid the military, and he's found money to pay them, which is the right thing to do. Some of my Democrat friends were upset about that. But, look, I give the president credit for going out there, finding those dollars. He has kept the WIC program, a nutritional program used by pregnant women, new mothers. He is using tariff money to keep that program afloat when that program ran out of money shortly after the shutdown. The president is looking at ways in which he can find dollars to pay federal law enforcement. At this point, that's still something that the administration is doing. And so Donald Trump has done all he can to minimize the damage. But at this point, we have seen really no breakthrough with Democrats that they are willing to come to the table to end what will, after tomorrow, be the second longest shutdown in government history, reopen the government so that we can get back to doing the people's business.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. He has done his dead level best to try to minimize the pain for sure. So here's a procedural question for you, Congressman. I'm not sure I even understand. Who can actually put such legislation on the floor in the U.S. Senate? Is that strictly up to Senate Majority Leader Thune? How does that work?
Yeah, as I understand, I think their rules are very similar to ours in that it does require the majority leader, in this case, to be able to put legislation on the floor. I do believe that the Senate has a process very similar to what we have in the House, that if you have a certain number of members, then legislation can go directly to the floor, and then the House, it's known as a discharge petition. I think they have something similar in the Senate, but it's going to be up to Thune to be bringing the legislation to the floor. Either he has to bring it or he has to allow Schumer. And for a number of weeks, he allowed Schumer to bring the Democrats' counter proposal to open the federal government. That was the proposal. If you remember, Gerard, it had roughly $1.5 trillion in new spending.
Yeah.
Some of that would go back to reimburse states that allowed illegal immigrants to opt into their health care system. It abolished the $50 billion rural hospital fund. It reauthorized some of the funding that had been cut in the rescissions package. And, it had money in there for a lot of LGBTQ. There were tens of millions of dollars for the LGBTQ programs out there, which many of us don't feel should be funded with federal taxpayer dollars. And so they were allowed to put that bill on the floor. It failed. At this point, Schumer is not allowed to put that version on the floor.
Okay.
And so it will be strictly up to John Thune as to what legislation they choose to take up.
Okay, gotcha. Well, but you don't expect the outcome to be any different at this point, do you, Congressman?
I don't. I don't see that there has been any movement. I know that we are past the pressure point of the No Kings rally, that there were a lot of people who believed that the Democrats were not even going to consider reopening the government till they got past the rallies this weekend. We're on the other side of that. I'm hearing that once the notices go out at the end of the month, beginning of next month, that the Democrats may be willing to consider reopening. But, here's the thing is the Democrats are wanting to close the government because they want the extension of the Obamacare subsidies.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is roughly $500 billion over the next 10 years. But they're not willing to negotiate. I mean, that's what Jeffrey said. Jeffrey said, we're not willing to negotiate. It's an all or nothing. And look, Republicans just aren't going to give the Democrats what they want in this case. The Affordable Care Act has been a complete failure. It is anything but affordable. It is being propped up by federal tax dollars, in this case subsidies going directly to insurance companies. And Republicans have said, if you want to talk about what we can do to improve health care, open the government. But I'll just tell you, I can't speak for all Republicans. I can only speak for one. But I never intend to vote for what the Democrats are asking for, just to get them to reopen the government for 7 weeks. That's not going to happen. We know that 7 weeks actually isn't even 7 weeks anymore. We're now roughly a month. We're just asking the Democrats to open the government between now and November the 20th, and they're unwilling or reluctant to do so. So I think we're going to continue to be in this standoff probably for several more days, if not the foreseeable future, Gerard.
So you've noticed that there are some in your House, of course, in the House, that on the Republican side, I think 14 last count I saw, that are in favor of some degree of extension of the enhanced subsidies. And then this morning there are reports that there's some Republican senators that are certainly willing to have that conversation as well. Where do you stand on that? Is there kind of a version of that you could live with to continue to some extent these enhancements?
Well, I take the position. I think that we've seen Mike Johnson really talk through it at his multiple press conferences he has every day. Is look, if we want to talk about these enhanced Obamacare subsidies, let's open the government.
Yep.
And then the next thing is, I believe that we need to put income limits on these subsidies. If you look at the figures, roughly 35% of all the subsidies go to families making $100,000 or more. And so these are not necessarily families who are right at the poverty line. In some cases, they're families making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're able to apply and receive these subsidies. So I think we need to look at income limits. I think we need to look at putting guardrails in place, because I've seen reports that some of the policies are what are known as phantom policies, that there aren't actually policies of individuals. And so insurance companies are able to use these phantom policies not to insure individuals, but strictly for profit. And the thing I think is most important, if we're going to shut down the government, if this is the most important thing that we are dealing with as a country, I think the Democrats should put forth a plan as to how they're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
If we're going to have $500 billion in insurance subsidies, then what programs are they willing to cut to pay for those?
Yeah.
And we've not heard that. All we've heard is just this will be added to the national debt. And I think Republicans are tired of spending money that we're not on programs that we can't afford to pay for.
We'll take a break right here, but if you can hang with us, we'll continue this discussion.
Would love to. Yes, sir.
We got Congressman Michael Guest. We're coming right back. Days we're visiting with Congressman Michael Guest. All right, so Congressman, is it possible we can see a breakthrough on this? Because I understand your position, and you're right that these enhanced subsidies are cost about $40 billion a year. That's on top of the $80 billion plus already that the just standard original Obamacare ACA marketplace subsidies cost. So you're looking at $120, $130 billion a year of what, as you indicate, are simply payments to the insurers that sell their coverage in the exchanges. This isn't cash money vouchers that goes to the subscribers. You sign up, and the way the law works, your premiums are limited to a certain percentage of your income, and everything over that, the government picks up and sends directly to the insurer.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, and that's what I think a lot of people don't understand. I mean, these are subsidies to the insurance company. And so these monies go directly to the insurance companies. You're exactly right. They don't go to constituents. They don't go to the individuals. They go to the insurance companies. There have been allegations that there are many fraudulent policies because there are no claims that are made on those policies. And so there needs to be guardrails in place to stop waste, fraud, and abuse. I think when people think about subsidies for health care, they think about people who are at or near the poverty line. They don't think of individuals and families who are making, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And again, we're $38 trillion in national debt. And so, at some point, we've got to step back and we've got to say, look, what are some of the driving costs of that debt that we're incurring?
Yeah.
And some of that's healthcare. Healthcare is a big part of that.
Yep.
And so this is a way for us to begin to get that spending curve under control. And so I think that there would be people who would consider some sort of modified enhanced subsidies. But I think that there is not an appetite in the House, at least, and I can only speak for the House, are not a widespread appetite, and I don't think Mike Johnson is going to put on the floor just a flat extension of the Obamacare subsidies. And we see Jeffries has said, look, he's not in favor and does not support a one-year subsidy. He doesn't support us negotiating changing this program. He wants the program extended as is indefinitely, and that is the only thing that he will be supportive of.
Okay.
So he's drawn a line in the sand, and he said, hey, we don't want to negotiate. This is a hostage situation. This is a take it or leave it. If you don't give us what we want, then we're going to keep the government shut down. And that's what we've seen now going on for week 4.
Okay, so I didn't realize that. So Schumer says no, it's got to be permanent. That just an extension
not
for
Schumer,
a year.
Oh, Jeffries.
Oh, Jeffries. Pardon me. On the House side. Okay, that's what I apologize. I missed that. Yeah, but my guess is Schumer may feel the same way because, like I said, there are Republicans that said, well, okay, well, if you guys would just open the government up, I'm talking about in the Senate, we'll talk about this, and really I think what they mean is we'll talk about ways to address this health care problem that's affecting all of us. And this all goes back, Congressman, you talk about the Affordable Care Act, how it's made premiums and the cost of health care anything but affordable. Goes back to some wizard back in 2009-10 time frame that said, hey, insurance shouldn't cost more than 8.5% maximum of your household income.
That's right. When Obamacare was being debated, when it ultimately was being passed out of the Senate and House strictly along party lines, I mean, the American people were sold a bill of goods. I remember that if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, that quality of care is going to go up, cost is going to go down. And I think many of us, when we heard all the arguments that were being made in favor of that, many of us were skeptical and said, hey, we don't believe what we're being told. And now as we look back many years later, We see that the cost of medicine has gone up dramatically. While healthcare has improved at some level, it's not improved to the level that we had been promised. And again, this is a major driver of our national debt, which is healthcare. And how do we look at healthcare as a whole? And look, if you want to talk about, and I think it would be a great discussion for the House and Senate to have, is what can we do to overhaul the Affordable Care Act? What can we do to make sure we're taking care of our rural hospitals, we're taking care of people in rural communities, but what can we also do at the same time that we're going to try to get costs under control? And just passing an extension of the Obamacare enhanced subsidies, which were supposed to expire at the end of COVID, and we're well past the end of COVID, I believe it's going to do nothing but continue to drive costs up.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it seems like it. Is there any further discussion among your colleagues, congressmen, about other areas that we can cut spending, especially given that it looks like we got an increase on the defense side of the discretionary component of government, but that other half of discretionary spending, which is the massive agency complex, I know there have been some permanent layoffs, it appears, or terminations of some of the jobs as part of this furlough process during the shutdown. Any discussion there about cutting some spending?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we need to get the government reopened, Gerard, is, in the House we have passed all 12 of the appropriations bills. If you look at those 12 bills, 9 of those 12 bills we actually reduced spending from the year before. And so the bills that increased spending were Homeland Security, Defense, and MilCon VA. The other 9 bills, we actually had a reduction in spending. So an overall reduction in spending from the previous FY25. And what we're trying to do is get the appropriations bills. We're trying to get back into regular order, get the appropriations bills in the House and Senate, get those bills worked out, the differences in those bills, so that we can fund the government by way of appropriation bills, not CR. But I will tell you that the appropriation bills in the House, again, 9 of those 12 bills, we came in under the amount of money that we spent in FY25, and an overall decrease in spending. So there is an effort on the Republican side to bring spending down. Now, that only accounts for discretionary spending, which is 25% of the spending.
Yep.
The other 75%, as we've talked about before, is mandatory spending, and that mandatory spending will go up as long as we continue to see health care costs soar.
Right. But I did want to point out, of the 25%, as you point out correctly, which is discretionary, that goes generally about half to defense and half to so-called non-defense domestic spending. But both the House and Senate passed legislation that does increase defense spending. Man, it seems like at a minimum we got to reduce the non-defense discretionary spending by at least that amount.
Yeah, and the increase in the defense spending, I will say, was fairly minimal. There was an increase, but it wasn't a huge increase, again, from FY25, and there were corresponding cuts and actually additional cuts in the other 9 spending bills, so we would actually be in FY26. We would spend, again, looking at the 12 bills in total, if what passed the House Appropriations Committee were actually signed into law, we would actually spend less in FY26 than we did in FY25.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I do think that the increase on the House side was somewhat less than what the Senate NDAA was calling for, as I recall.
Yeah, and look, we got to make sure that we're paying our troops,
sure.
And we've got to make sure that we're making that investment. You talk about Reagan's vision of peace through strength. We are able to stay out of conflicts if we have the best trained, best equipped fighting force in the world, which we currently have. But we know particularly what we've seen with defense spending in China, that we are in a new Cold War, a new arms race, and we can't afford to fall behind. And so that's why it's important, with all the events happening in the Indo-Pacific, that we continue to have a robust investment in our military infrastructure, and making sure, again, that we properly pay and support our troops.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm concerned about that, man. I think you would agree. If anybody needs to be prioritized to get paid, it's the people that serve in our uniform.
That is right. And look, I give the president a great deal of credit for finding money to pay our troops and not using them as a pawn in this government shutdown. And I continue to support his efforts. And I think that there is going to be legislation offered in the Senate this week that would pay all essential employees, those individuals, not only military, but law enforcement, anybody that has been deemed essential. I'm told that bill is going to come to the floor possibly on Wednesday. And we'll see if Democrats will support that legislation.
Okay, good. That's good to know. Well, we hope we get some breakthrough here pretty soon, Congressman. We got to go. We appreciate you joining us, and if anything breaks, I'm sure we'll have you back on to enlighten us. Thanks a lot, man.
Yes, sir, Gerard. Good talking to you as always.
You bet.